So I think it's fair to say that radio, like the other media we have looked at so far, traditional media, is kind of finding its level with the advent of the internet, and still exists. Audio, entertainment, and information is still something that has a lot of advantages. One thing it has is very cheap production costs. You don't need to have a fancy set to broadcast the news on the radio, or a bunch of set changes and special effects to broadcast entertainment on the radio. And as we'll discuss a little later in the course, radio can truly be a theater of the mind, where it can invoke your imagination, make you picture things, and involve your brain in ways that a more full experience, as is with video or television, really cannot. So, more about that later. So this is the next piece of furniture to emerge into people's living rooms. And here we have the family watching a black and white TV set. They finished their Swanson's TV dinner. These were these sort of awful frozen foods that were sold in aluminum trays. I mean, yes, you can still get them. I think a lot of them are improved. As everybody always says, Trader Joe's has great frozen food. But these TV dinners, in the trays, I mean, you put it in the oven, it had aluminum foil on top, and you came out and you had these couple of gray pieces of some kind of meat and some macaroni and cheese that wasn't too bad, and then some strange little peas that looked dried out, each one in its own little area, in the tray, the aluminum tray, and then you had your little dessert, your little apple cobbler, cherry cobbler, whatever it was. Anyway, you had a TV tray, TV table, right, that you put your TV dinner on, and you watched your programs with the family. Oh, yes. And now, just a few words about the last of the traditional media we're going to discuss, which is television. So, President Franklin Roosevelt took amazing advantage of radio, and that just sparks my thought a little bit here, and I sort of feel like there were some things I wanted to say after the Orson Welles broadcast, the War of the Worlds broadcast, because, as you know, that was in 1939 also. And here we have Roosevelt doing some television broadcasting, and he was famous for his fireside chats on the radio. So during the Depression, first of all, and then during World War II, radio was used, I think I said before, very effectively by politicians. I wanted to just very quickly say something about one of the reasons Orson Welles is reported to have aired War of the Worlds. As many of you may know, this caused somewhat of a panic, this program, because some people took it seriously. They thought that we were really being invaded by Martians, and that this was a real news broadcast. And there were traffic jams in New Jersey, and all kinds of scared people, and it was quite a sensation. And controversial, and got Welles into a little bit of hot water. Also got him on the cover of a lot of newspapers, which didn't hurt him in going to Hollywood and helping to write, direct, and star in Citizen Kane, arguably one of the greatest films ever made. He did that at the age of 27, by the way. War of the Worlds, he was 23. Why did he do this? So the speculation is the medium of radio was already being used for fake news, quote unquote. And the phrase fake news actually goes back to the 30s, because there were some examples of people putting things on the radio that were just not credible or accurate. There were also I'm going to say demagogues, people with strong political and societal and moral views who were broadcasting freely on the radio. There was a Father Coughlin, I think his name was, in Chicago. Very conservative, very anti-Roosevelt, very anti-New Deal, very anti-unemployment compensation, Social Security, all those kinds of things. There was a politician down south named Huey Long, Huey Long, who was another demagogue and used the radio to say things that weren't true. And then, of course, the Nazis in World War II broadcast in English, attempting to reach, and did reach, people in Britain and also in the U.S. who could pick up the signals with a bunch of false news, fake news information to try to influence events. So, in fact, what we see today with Facebook, etc., is not brand new, because until certain standards and things were put in place, there were people even back in the 30s and 40s using radio for disinformation and misinformation. So I just wanted to get that out there while I remembered it. So basically what happened with television was that the strong players in radio, the established networks, particularly NBC and CBS, basically just flipped over and did the same model, adding a visual, and did TV. They took the same shows that were on radio and put them on TV. The same advertisers just walked right over to TV with them and now could show their package and could show the nice white clean clothes and the smiling faces and how sexy everybody looked while they were smoking Chesterfields, and how healthy and ruddy cheeked that those good old Chesterfields made you look there when you were smoking. So 1948, there were 4 TV networks: CBS, NBC, ABC, and Dumont. Interesting. Dumont didn't last forever. 128 local stations, had a full primetime schedule 7 days a week as of 1948. And as we'll see in a minute, lots of times the programming and how good the programming is can push the development of the medium. Most early TV shows started on radio. Well, and this is just what I'm talking about here. We're going to look at a video again in just a minute. TV's first superstar. How quickly they forget. Whose real name was Mendel Berlinger. Changed his name to Milton Berle. Went to Hollywood, had a lot of bit parts and things, and he's a pretty charming, funny guy, and had a lot of buddies, and he worked in films, nothing very big, a lot of B, C movies. But then he got hooked into this thing called television in 1948, in fact. And in those days, as was the case with lots of the early radio programs, there was one sponsor for the whole program. I mean, Paley did it differently. Paley would take multiple sponsors, but a lot of the radio shows and early on would just have one sponsor. And that's what Milton Berle carried over into TV. And Texaco, which was a gas company, a gas station company, sponsored Milton Berle, and they called it the Texaco Star Theater, and it ran from 1948 to 1956. And as you'll see, it's basically a vaudeville show on TV. They even use curtains and stage, and there are people sitting in an audience watching it, and then they just brought cameras into it. And that's what the show was. Then multiple acts. You had a singer and some comedy and some stuff. But Milton Berle stood out and was somebody people talked about at the water cooler. It was almost like an early Howard Stern or something, because people couldn't really believe what he did. He was so different and just not really afraid to say anything or do anything. In 1948, 191,000 TVs by the end of his run. And it wasn't just him, of course, but he was a big driver of it. 21 million TV sets in American households. And now we're going to stop, and I'm going to show you Texaco Star Theater, 2 or 3 minutes from May 29th, 1951. This is what American households were watching 2 years before your esteemed professor came in existence on this earth.